Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Frank Conversations on the spiritualplayboy.com. I'm your host, Frank Mondeose, and with me today, I have a very dynamic being. She describes herself as a recovering, hot-headed, codependent people pleaser. And now she's found her boundaries, self-responsibility, conscious communication to create abundance in healthy, rich, and nurturing relationships. Welcome, Natalie Ford. How are you?
Hi, Frank Mondeose. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. I'm doing really great. I'm really happy to be here.
I'm really happy to have you here. For those of you that don't know, Natalie is an old friend of mine, and she's been on multiple episodes of the spiritualplayboy.com. And it's been a beautiful journey to watch this being just like step into her power and her mastery. And I back that up. I back that intro up, the recovering, hot-headed, codependent people pleaser. You're awesome. It's really an honor to watch you on your path. And today we're here to talk about your new course, Talking Truths. Tell me a bit about what that is and what your intention is with it.
Thanks, Frank. So Talking Truths is an online program for people who are already on their conscious path, their spiritual development, looking at themselves with self-awareness. And maybe you've been trying out having these difficult conversations with friends or family or partners, but you're just not managing to nail it. Things are going wrong. The emotions are flaring up. They're getting in the way. Maybe you're not adequately preparing, not choosing the right time, place, asking for time out. So really this program is really focusing on the energetics and the emotions of these conversations where other programs don't address these aspects. They just give you a list of, stay calm, keep respectful of the other person, keep eye contact and sort of like don't wag your finger. But really that just scratches the surface. There's so much more to these conversations that actually requires quite a lot of preparation, a lot of self-awareness, patience, and my program is the place where you can come and learn that.
I love this because I think it's something that is so needed in the world. In my work, especially working with couples or people that want to be in relationship, one of the things that I find the most is that people don't want to have the difficult conversations. So they'll either go into avoidance, they'll sweep it under the rug, or they'll figure that if they could just like avoid it a bit more, they won't have to deal with it. And we know that this is just not true. What's your experience of that?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people do avoid this because it's such volatile territory. People are scared, am I going to be able to maintain my emotional composure? What is the other person going to do? Are they going to start losing their rag and getting irrational with me, start attacking me or blaming me? And people think that it's better just not to go there. They've got this story running, I won't go there. It's fine. We can just keep the peace. But the truth is, you're not keeping the peace. The truth is this discontentedness in your energy is actually seeping out. It's leaking into your relational space, and it's creating toxicity. Your partner or your friend or whoever it is that you're having this unhappy relationship with or unhappy circumstance with is subconsciously going to be feeling this energy. They're going to know something's wrong. Just because you're not saying it doesn't mean that they don't know about it.
Beautiful, good point. So, when we started talking about this, I said, wow, this is a great tool for couples or dyads or partnerships. But you just alluded to this being useful for in any type of relationship, mother-daughter, mother-son, friendships, and so on. Am I correct in assuming that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Talking Truths program is really aimed at anyone who has a relationship of any nature, and that might be friendships. It can also be work relationships, obviously loverships, love relationships. It can also be used with family. What I would caveat is that family is the hardest category of people to have these conversations. And the reason that is because so much of our childhood wounding gets activated when we have these conversations. And if you're having that conversation with the person who possibly contributed towards your childhood wounding, it's going to flare up even more. So yes, Talking Truths is aimed at all of these conversations, and families are the trickiest.
Well, that's another good point, because what I've realized in my own experience, yes, I do this work, but I do this work because, I teach this work because I'm a recovering all those things as well, right? And I'm still, to me, it's a day-to-day challenge. And when it comes to difficult conversations, personally, I love difficult conversations. I like to go into them. It's part of my whole brand kind of thing. But one thing I've realized is that you're right. When I'm with my family, all those quick emotional triggers, there's so much more at the surface. But when I look at where I get triggered and how I react in my other relationships and difficult conversations, I notice it's like the same type of behavior. So it's like I've taken this from my childhood and I'm projecting it onto my other relations.
Yeah, exactly that. So some of the people that I work with will already have this awareness that a lot of what triggers us in day-to-day life, and by trigger I mean, creates a reaction in us. Often it can be anger, but it might also be the opposite of like wanting to run away. So I'll just speak momentarily to that piece, and that a trigger is when our nervous system goes into a survival response. So that might be fear. It will always be fear. It might be flight, fight, or it might be freeze. Those are the sort of three primary survival responses which we might have. And fight is when you get really angry and, you're feeling agitated. It could be anything from just like marginally frustrated to, you really want to take this person's head off. The flight response could be as mild as just like, I don't want to deal with this, I'm going to turn away. Or it might actually be like, I feel like my life is in danger, I want to like leave the room. Or leave the house. And the freeze response, which actually many people don't recognize, it's when we just sort of sit there and do nothing. It's because the body has frozen. Our nervous system has gone into a state of shock in which the thinking and talking and functioning parts of our brain are actually offline right now. We're in the reptilian brain, the survival part. And the body literally freezes, and the voice box often disappears. We can't find our words. We're just, exactly a little bit like I'm doing right now, struggling to find the words. And sometimes, somebody might be shouting at us or having done something that's really not okay, but we don't do anything about it. And then later, the inner critic comes so strong. Oh my God, why didn't I respond? Why didn't I do something? So anyway, all of those are triggers.
So I'm curious as to, so when these things come up, you mentioned right off the bat that these are fear responses. So am I right in assuming that when we're having a difficult conversation because there's a discomfort of either being misunderstood or whatnot, that these behaviors are coming up from fear? So if I'm acting like this, if I'm going into fight, it's because I'm afraid or insecure. Like, of what or how or why? Like, can you give me a bit more information about like why would this come up?
Yeah, that's a really great point, Frank, because often if we go into fight, which was my main go-to, this hot-headed reaction, it doesn't look like you're scared. It actually looks the opposite. It looks like you're quite confident and aggressive and not to be messed with. But when we start to really peel back the layers, what's playing out at a much, much deeper level, sometimes so deep, certainly through most of my 20s, if someone had said to me, you're scared, I'd be like, don't be ridiculous. I'm not scared. I'm, tough or whatever. But actually what's playing out is fear of rejection, fear of being made wrong, fear of hurting the other person, fear of being abandoned, fear of, losing this person out of our life. Or for me, what used to play out a lot was I was already actually feeling pretty terrible about myself. I didn't really know that on a conscious level, but subconsciously, I really didn't actually like who I was. And that was like in my energy all of the time. So if somebody criticized me, it just was too much for me to handle, because I already had so much critic going on inside my head telling me, I'm not this, I have to be more this, I can't do this, I should do this, relentless bang, 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 that if another voice came and said, oh, Natalie, blah, 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 whatever, it was just too much for my system to handle. And so then I would launch into this, like hot-headed, fiery attack mode.
Yeah, that's, I think, people that are watching this, not everybody have all the information yet. I think this is a revelation. It's a revelation because we don't recognize sometimes where this response comes from, the fight, flight, or freeze. Yes, we could say fear, but it's not so conscious in our head that it's like, oh, because I don't want this person to go, or that if I misunderstand that I'm going to be rejected, or I'm not good enough. So there is this self-worth or lack source that it comes from. And when I understood that, it really supported me to, at least intentionally change my behavior, because this stuff, like you said, it's reptilian. It's almost like it's survival. That's what the ego wants. It wants to survive. So this is incredible. Do you have any kind of, I know you don't want to give all the details of the course, but do you have any high-level coping mechanisms that you could tease us with, that stuff that you go through in the course?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the course, there's a really clear structure around the stages that you need to go through to have these conversations. A lot of it is also available out there on the internet in terms of the high level stuff, but it really doesn't go into the detail, and it misses the energetics and the emotional tools and hygiene which is required to actually nail these conversations. So for starters, you would never have the conversation right there and then, or I say never, very, very rarely ever choose to have the conversation right there and then when the incident is actually happening, because the chances are both of you are going to be in a triggered response. One of you might be wanting to run away, one of you might be ready to kill the other, or maybe both the same. So the first thing is, take a pause. Go away, take some space, say to the other that you're going to come back. I want to talk this through. Now's not the right moment. Let's come back in, say, 3 days. Let's have a conversation, and commit to doing that and follow through. Then you want to go away and you really want to prepare. And this is where working with a coach, someone like me, really supports you in this area, because you want to move through the emotions of what's playing out for you. You really want to get those emotions out, whatever they are, so that they don't play out in the conversation. You want a space where you can be free to express and to really just release and let go of that energetic charge that's in your body. You also want to prepare and have clear before you go into the conversation, what are my boundaries in this conversation? What are my fears? What are my needs? And what ultimately am I wanting to get from this conversation? So we're really clear when we go into this conversation. Then the program talks about, actually having the conversation, where to position it, how to ask for it, how to manage if you get triggered in the conversation, which is a really, really big piece. So you might have cleared a lot of your charge before you go in, you've planned what to say, but then somebody they just say something that just catches you, and it pushes a button in your body that just, creates that response again. And how can we be with that whilst in this really delicate space of the conversation? I give you a whole load of tools around how to do that. How to make sure that we stay on point in the conversation, how to work with if the other person gets really reactional. So I work a lot with open listening skills and non-reactivity. So how do we stay non-reactive? And if the other person starts becoming reactive, how can we de-escalate the communication so that we can both come back to a place of calm and centeredness to continue talking at a regular level. And then finally, if it doesn't go well, which when we're practicing and when we haven't, quite got the finesse around these things, it sometimes doesn't. How can I look after myself afterwards? How can I cleanse my energy? How can I release what just happened from my body, cut cords, disconnect, and also start to recognize, what is mine in that conversation? What do I need to take ownership for? But also, what is not mine? What don't I need to take ownership for? And giving emotionally and energetically back to the other person what is theirs, whilst acknowledging where we still have work to do.
Wow, that's beautiful. So I'm curious, what happens if, we've made these attempts to connect and, we just keep hitting either one or the other's fear response and it's not going anywhere? And you spoke about, sometimes people project things onto you. Sometimes they're not yours, and you're trying to have this difficult conversation and get to resolution, but there's too much projection going on, and there's the expectation that I have to acknowledge that as truth. But my sovereignty, my individuality knows that there's pieces that I own, and other things that I feel that are not really mine or not my responsibility. Do you support people to see the difference in that and how to manage those projections?
Yeah, absolutely. So to a limited extent in the program, this is covered, but if this really is the piece that you're wanting to work with, someone's wanting to work with, then I offer one-to-one coaching around helping to get really clear in what is mine, what isn't mine. Ultimately, it comes down to really knowing ourselves, really feeling in our bodies, what is our truth, and being really honest with ourselves and prepared to own what we call shadow, that the parts of ourselves that actually are not always so much in our awareness, parts that, might be playing out that maybe we don't really want to acknowledge, but those are pieces that we do have to own so that we can start to really separate, okay, well, if this part is mine, what about this other part? This part didn't feel true. Even if I'm being really honest about owning all of my shadow pieces, this part just doesn't sit with me. Exactly. It might be projection from the other. Projection is when somebody has something in themselves that they just can't really own, and rather than owning it about themselves, they see it in everybody else. So you've got shadow if when a certain quality really bothers you about everybody else, then you're that's my shadow.
I get that. So last question here. Difficult conversations, there's a benefit to having them. And they're called difficult conversations because they're difficult. What's in your opinion, the bottom line, the benefit of talking these truths, especially when talking these truths might lead to greater separation? Why would I want to have this conversation regardless?
Yeah, great question. Thanks, Frank. So, ultimately, it's always my desire to support people to try to find some harmony, some agreement. But sometimes actually the best thing to do is to recognize that this isn't going to work, and to then get clear on, okay, what boundaries are here, what's mine, what isn't, how can we, come to hopefully a clean as possible resolution around this, which sometimes may require separation. But if we can work through this and actually come to a greater understanding, it builds, well, actually both cases build healthier relationships throughout all of your life. Because ultimately, why stay in a connection that just isn't working? When you get down to the nitty-gritty honest, why stay in a connection that isn't honoring your truth, isn't allowing you to be who you really are, or there's some toxic dynamic that's playing out there? It's actually much better to clear those relationships from our space, because that's toxic energy that's sort of circling in our space. It's much better to clear that out and make space for healthier relationships, which using this type of communication style will bring in. And for the relationships which you can work on, it builds much greater bonding, much greater closeness. It helps us step more into our adults, take us out of our child archetype, more into the adult archetype, what we call the sovereign. We can become generally better people. It helps us become more self-aware, which is vital for building fulfilling aspects of our life. Unless we deeply know who we are, we can't really get what we want in life, because we look around and we just become mirror reflections for everyone else. Oh, I want this because somebody else wants it, or I want this because somebody told me that's what should make me happy. So it builds integrity. You get to know yourself on a deeper level. It builds integrity, courage. You start to trust yourself more, confidence. Your relationship with honesty becomes a much more fluid, natural relationship, which then breeds healthy relationships all around you. The toxic relationships start to die away, and the relationships which can support growth and become healthier do. Yeah.
Super well articulated, Natalie. Thank you so much. I like to say that for me, one of the most loving actions you can offer a friend, a beloved, or whatnot, is the gift of choice. And I think talking your truths or having these difficult conversations at least puts the cards on the table, so that I know what's going on with the other, whether it be in regards to me, in regards to themselves. And so having this information, I could then make a choice of how I want to meet you. And to me, that's the most beautiful thing. So if everybody that's watching is having difficulty sharing your truth, especially in delicate conversations that you're worried that are going to go bad and then create separation, I highly suggest that you check out Talking Truths with Natalie Ford. One thing, Natalie's integrity is really high. I've really enjoyed getting to know this being in the world. She's only impressed me more and more through our life journey that we've taken together. And so, Natalie, I want to give you a moment to let people know how they could contact you, how they could get access to this course, and anything else any last parting words that you'd like to share.
Thanks so much, Frank. So yeah, just go to my website. It's natalie-ford.com. That's natalie-ford.com. All my details are on there. You can learn about Talking Truths. You can message me for private coaching. You can also find me on Facebook. I'm connected with Frank, and on Instagram. So yeah, come and find me. Come and talk some truths. Come and make your relationships healthier.
Super well done. I wish you a lot of luck and success with these ventures that you are on. Thank you so much for your time on Frank Conversations today.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So there you have it, another deep dive, good conversation, frank conversation on a topic that is really relevant today and super important. If you've liked this content, please like, comment, and share. Check out frankmondeose.com. It's my portal into all my work, from where I'm traveling and giving courses to my media, such as thespiritualplayboy.com or the Daring World podcast. And like I always say, let love free, because it's the only way we'll ever change anything. Peace. Mwah.